Hey. Well, welcome to our Godly Awesome podcast. Today, I'm talking to someone I went to high school with. In high school, you remember those people who were always really kind to you, but who you never really got to know all that well during high school. Well, this man I'm talking to is one of those men. He's just fascinating. He's done great work. He's just a wonderful person. So I'm excited to have a conversation with him like we never had in high school. I'll tell you more about him, but first this.
Today's guest, Josh Munce.
Back to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast, episode 220. So let me tell you about Josh. So when Josh was in high school, he had one ambition in life: to be a big-time movie director. Josh followed his dream into film school in Montana, but during his first semester that he was overcome with a strong sense that he needed to return home to South Dakota. But Josh's ambition for storytelling did not end. No, first he was a local news photojournalist and editor for a decade. And most recently, he told stories of resilience and determination of local and regional athletes as a producer, shooter, editor, and sometimes writer from Midco Sports Magazine. And Midco Sports Magazine is a multi-Emmy winning show on Midco Sports Network, or what it was. Just an amazing show. And this is sweet. Later in life, he met a wonderful woman and fell in love with her. Her name is Lindsay. Together, they're raising two girls, ages 4 and 6. Please help me welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Virtual Studios, Josh Munce.
Hey, Jason.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
So can we dive right in?
Absolutely. I was listening to your introduction, and I'm interested in what you have to ask as well. So let's get going.
Cool. And I'm going to since we were in high school, we've had a few conversations, and I know more about you than I used to, but I'm still going to find out things about you.
Right. I think so I graduated in 1993. Did you graduate 4
Oh,
or 5?
I'm a baby. I graduated in 2012. No, I graduated in 94.
94. Okay, so you were a year behind, but we had a couple of classes together.
Yeah.
And I remembered you in classes, and we had a lot of mutual friends, and I remember you specifically in cross country track as well, or
Yeah.
Yep. So yes.
So I don't know if I knew when we were in high school, but tell me about this dream of being a big time movie director. How what was the genesis of that dream?
Yeah, when I was growing up, I kind of gravitated towards movies. I loved watching movies. I loved learning things about movies. I had buddies who could tell you all the statistics and everything about sports and who played this position and who coached here and all that jazz. But I could do the same thing with movies. What director directed these movies, and I would often, and this was like when I was in elementary school, I would cut out I would go to the newspaper and cut out the now showing advertisements for the movies. And I would I don't even know why I did that, but I would collect them. And at that time, you would know what a good movie was by how long they would be held in the theaters. Like Ghostbusters was held weeks upon weeks upon weeks, and they would throw that in the newspaper. I just thought that was fascinating. Even books, I would read the novelization of movies, and I would often try to read those before I went to go see a movie, just to see if the movie that I put in my head while reading the book was what ended up on the screen as well. So I loved movies. I loved everything about them. I loved storytelling. I was in Boy Scouts, and I had the opportunity to go to a national jamboree it was about junior high, and Spielberg did a talk. And
what so you had an opportunity to go to national jamboree. First of all, how did that opportunity happen?
Well, in Boy Scouts, I don't even know if it's every 2 or 4 years, but they had a jamboree where they would invite all the troops from across the nation, and I'm sure other countries would come, and we would all travel to the East Coast, and they'd have about a week or two of just scouting events, and they'd bring in different people.
And Steven Spielberg came and spoke.
Yeah, he was an Eagle Scout, and at that time, every night we would go and we would listen to. They would have some event every night, and they'd have a speaker. The first President Bush came and spoke, and granted, this was me and thousands of other scouts. So it wasn't just me one-on-one with these people, but I had an opportunity to kind of listen to them and realize that they were once young and had a dream and worked towards their dream. And I think that just kind of solidified my dream to tell stories on the big screen. So when it came time for, what to do after high school, I was looking at different schools, and Montana State University in Bozeman has a film school, and to my geographically not, looking at a map, it looks a lot closer to South Dakota, but not too far away. So I kind of pinpointed Bozeman, and I packed up some stuff and headed out to Bozeman.
As a kid, did you have any friends who shared your interest in movies?
Not as much as I did. I was really a movie nerd. I mean, I just, not to that extent. So I had friends that liked specific movies, and I could certainly talk to them about specific movies, but not like movies overall. Yeah.
So one last question on this period. What are your 3 top movies from childhood?
Oh, that's tough.
I bet.
That's man, I love the Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I loved Ghostbusters when it came out in 84, 85. what other movies? I mean, I it's hard for me to specifically say because I loved like these movies in the comedy range and these movies in the the whatever. I'll tell you that I probably stayed at that age. I probably stayed away from horror movies, but E.T. was great too. I mean, 84, if you look back at 84 specifically and all the amazing movies that came out that year and all the movies that came out, then that spurred sequels. Great year. 84 was a great year. 94 was a great year too, which is strange that it was 10 years difference. But like 94, I think Pulp Fiction came out. So yeah. Anyways, this could be a whole different conversation.
One more question on the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like for you when the technology of VCR started coming out?
Yeah. So I think another thing that really kind of drove me towards movies is my dad had a movie camera that like a little film movie camera that he would bring with us as we were on vacation. And he was often using that. And every once in a while, as a, 10-year-old or 9-year-old or 8-year-old, he would let us run it. And then as it progressed into VHS, he had a camcorder as well. And that was pretty cool. And he let us use that a little bit. And it was a nice little tie to my dad. And then I remember the summer that I was old enough to just stay home during the summer without any parental guidance, I guess. I would sneak in and use my dad's V8 or camcorder, and I would set up my G.I. Joe guys, and I learned how to stop motion them. So I made a couple of videos, stop motion of the G.I. Joe guys, and added some music, and this was like all in camera stuff. But the funny thing is I was a little concerned about telling my dad that I was using his video camera. So I would kind of sneak in there and grab it and use it and try to have it back exactly how he had it before he got home. And years later, my younger brother happened to get out that stop motion G.I. Joe movie and show my dad. And that was pretty cool. He didn't realize that his camera could do the stop motion thing. But he was pretty impressed. Yeah.
Cool. So do you remember the day you went to the mailbox and you got the letter from Bozeman?
Yeah, I think so. Something else that we'll probably touch on is, as much as I had this dream of going to film school, at the same time on the side, my dad had cancer, to my knowledge, since I was in elementary school, and he had something that we had dealt with, and at the time during high school, he was going through some chemotherapy and stuff. So I had my brain in high school, but it was very foggy as far as like, I also like the other half of my brain was, worried about my dad. And when you're that age, high school age, you're kind of, and I hope I don't make anybody upset, but you're kind of stupid dumb. Or not stupid dumb, but you're smart dumb. You know all this stuff and you think you know the world, but you really don't know how that applies to the world.
Yeah.
So I my mind was full on forward with going to Montana and film school, but at the same time, there was a little bit kind of in the back of my head, like, worried about leaving home and what was going to happen back at home. And, even when I was in high school, knowing me in high school, I think I was I think part of me was always just dealing with this cancer thing. And, every time I learned something new about cancer, it would like flare up my worries on my dad and stuff. So, yeah.
What would you say to a kid whose parent is dealing with cancer to encourage them to
maybe to continue on or to stay focused or whatever? I mean, you're always going to worry about your parent, and but at the same time, your mom and dad want you to continue on and push forward, and no matter what, they want you to succeed. I mean, it wasn't until I became a parent that I truly understood how much your parent just wants you to learn and succeed in life. Yeah. So, my dad was really proud of me for going off to Bozeman into film school. I guess the next part of the story in that was I was there in Bozeman. I was in film school.
Yeah, you took a huge step towards the stream by being in Bozeman and film school. You were there.
Yeah, and I was enjoying classes, enjoying classes, and I was taking some entry level classes of just college classes, but then I had a couple of like history of film and so on, and I was looking forward to that. And then one day, and to me, looking back now, it seems like one day I woke up, but it might have been a little bit, over a few days. I just had this feeling of I probably needed to be home. And in retelling the story over the years, my mom and dad weren't necessarily telling me all the stuff that was going on at home, but my dad's cancer had come back pretty tough, and he was back in chemo, and so one day I woke up and I went in to admissions, and I dropped out of school, packed up all my bags, went to the bus station, called my parents and said, "Hey, I'm going to be at the bus station in this many days. Come pick me up." Actually, to tell you the truth, back then, because of long distance charges and all that, I had to tell my buddy Jesse Javers back here in Sioux Falls, who then called my parents to tell me that I was going to be at the bus station. So I packed all my stuff up, loaded on a bus. Didn't quite understand the whole bus situation where it doesn't go from one place to another. It traverses through all these small towns. But eventually I got back to Sioux Falls. My parents picked me up. I was a little concerned that they were going to be really upset with me. But my dad only asked me once. He said, "Why? Why, you had this dream?" And I was honestly, I didn't know at that time. I wasn't quite sure. And he never pressed it after that. But so that semester that I would have been in school, I ended up working for my dad, road construction. And he was still going through chemotherapy. So he would work road construction and then go have chemotherapy like on Fridays, and then kind of swing back. Yeah. He'd swing back through the job site.
Wow.
Yeah, it is amazing. But the nice thing is, and the silver lining, you always have to look for silver linings in these stories, is that I got to know him through his employees' eyes, if you will, not just through a son. So I got to see the respect and how he treated other people, which was really a gift. I ended up putting in an application actually SDSU was another school that I had applied to, and they had accepted me. I chose Bozeman. So I ended up getting into SDSU, and I was going to start in January. This story takes a turn that my dad passed away in January. I started back at SDSU in January. My intention was to end up back at Bozeman like after a year or two, but because of losing my dad, I just felt like it was better that I stuck around South Dakota and stuck around my mom and just
so what month did you leave Bozeman?
I probably was only at Bozeman a few weeks.
So you just started college. I mean, to us, you were really young then, from our perspective. Well, you were really young, and you heard this. You got this idea that, hey, I need to be home. Your dream was in Bozeman, but you got this idea that, hey, I need to be home. You talk about being young and stupid in high school, but how many people at any age, and me at times, don't listen to their voice?
Right.
And you could have said, oh, okay, I'll just finish out one semester, then I'll go back.
Right. And, I've looked back at that, just how that all worked out. And I could have stayed, and I probably wouldn't have come back for Thanksgiving, but I probably would have come back for Christmas. And by Christmas, my dad was, he was pretty well down the cancer journey, if you will. He was, he looked pretty thin and frail. But it was really the first time that I could really pinpoint me listening to that inner voice and realize, looking back, I mean, at the time I wasn't sure if I was a failure or not. I didn't realize that I was coming back to spend time with my dad. But it was the best decision that I ever made. I mean, so many, had I gone down that other path, you talk about like sliding doors or, what could have been or whatever. But I'm glad that I listened that voice, because so many things in my life have opened up to that. It's another thing that, I don't like to lean on regrets or what have you. I think that you really should listen to the inner voice. You should think about it, move forward. And
so many of us struggle with listening to the inner voice versus following what makes logical sense, or following what makes financial sense, or any of the thousands of excuses not to listen to the inner voice. What encouragement would you offer to all of us about listening to the inner voice?
Well, I'd say that, certainly your inner voice is everything that you know. I mean, everything that you know, and some of the things that we have a tendency to say, this is what I want, because everybody else around us is saying this is what you want. Or, I don't want to look like a failure because I'm not doing what everybody else says I should be doing. But, that inner,
that's a big one.
Yeah, but that inner voice is everything that you know. I mean, it's you telling yourself, in spite of what you think, you're think that you should be doing. It's what you're, with that voice. I don't know, everything that you've kind of learned and everything that you're feeling. It's pushing you in a certain direction. And I'm not saying you should just throw caution to the wind. I mean, you should put some thought into it. But in my case, again, it was one of the best decisions I made, was to listen to me, in that case.
Mm-hmm. So the same month that your dad passed, you enrolled in SDSU with the plan of going back to Bozeman eventually. How did the plan of going back to Bozeman turn into something else?
Well, I had applied at SDSU because they had a radio, television, film major. So I thought, I'll just take a few classes at SDSU, kind of let things settle down at home and get my mom back into life, if you will. But I figured it would probably be 2 years. So that semester that I was there, which was a tough semester, it was a really tough semester. I'm glad I did it, but man, I did not come out with a great GPA. I had A's in all of my storytelling type of classes, but everything else didn't look good. So anyway, I went to sign up for the next year, and my advisor said, "Oh yeah, you know what? You've already taken all the film classes that we offer. We've been meaning to take that F off of RTVF, radio, television, film. But why don't you take a couple of TV classes, and then we'll talk, before the next semester." So I started taking some TV classes, television news and writing and such. And I really enjoyed it. I really kind of saw what I was looking for in the big screen, but stories that I could tell almost in a smaller or quicker way, versus in my mind, the stories on the big screen would take a year or years to put together, where in television news, I had the opportunity to tell multiple stories in a smaller amount of time, and we're talking more documentary, type of stuff. I ended up working kind of as an entry-level production assistant at one of the local news places here in Sioux Falls while I was in school, and I really kind of got the news bug. And then I threw wholeheartedly into it. My last semester at SDSU, I was offered a job as a news photojournalist / editor, or a news guy, which everybody yells at the camera guy, or camera guy, which everybody yells at the person carrying around the camera equipment. And I kind of didn't look back. I was able to tell multiple stories on multiple days, and it really was what I was looking for.
So I actually asked you about this line when we got on today, because it was in my notes and I just couldn't figure out what the heck I was referring to. And the line is car accident, comma, dog fashion show, comma, the proper way to shovel. And I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, I think as we were, you do kind of a pre-interview. I don't want to give away your secrets, but you kind of talk to me ahead of time. And one of the things I said was, my day as a photojournalist was never the same and always interesting, because in the morning you could be sent to a car accident, in the afternoon a dog fashion show, and in the evening do a story on the proper way of shoveling. So I learned a lot about, or a little about, a lot of different things when I was working news.
So you went from, if you had become a director, as you said, it would take 1 or 2 years or even longer, right, to make a movie.
It's possible. I mean, maybe that's what I'm telling myself to make myself feel better about everything. But yeah, I mean, it takes for a motion picture. It takes a couple of years to put together, to plan and gather. Get the right resources and shoot it and then edit it and get it out there. And you're working a lot of time on one thing where I. In the 10 years that I worked in local news, I probably did thousands upon thousands of stories.
So you went from maybe, like, if you're really on top of your game producing 5 movies in a decade, and for that you would have to really be chugging along. You went from five movies to making thousands of stories
Right.
in a decade.
Yep.
That's a huge difference in the quantity of material you produced.
Right.
That you helped create.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I would have taken a notebook early on and put a little tag every time I did a story to really see how many we ended up doing. But it was on average about 3 stories a day, 5 days a week, 50 some weeks a year. And that adds up. So
your job, 3 stories a day, that's not slow paced at all. How do you learn to deal with the fast pace and the constant deadlines? And
yeah, I think that's one of the major things that I took from television news was you really have to prioritize what's important. And then also the big thing is realize not everything is going to be perfect. I could have worked on one story. I could have put in hours and hours and hours, but there was always a deadline and I needed to get that story done. So there were certain things that I wanted to be perfect, but in the end, as long as what I was putting together for the story didn't detract from the story or cause some kind of confusion by the viewer, it was going to be a good story. And in the end, the person that we're doing the story on got their story out there. So that is the perfection versus sitting there and meticulously figuring, wondering, does this shot go to this shot? Does this shot move on to this shot? So I think a couple of things, like I just said, is prioritizing what's important, and then not being focused on perfection, but being focusing on getting the story done and making sure that it's that it doesn't confuse anybody. And I think the third thing would be don't put off things till later. I mean, once I got a story and I got a script, I would jump into it versus saying, oh, I have an hour to get this done, because you never know when the scanner would go off and you'd be sent off to another fire or car accident or whatever.
So in your example about perfectionism, which so many of us struggle with, I'm slowly recovering perfectionism addict myself, but in your example, like, if you had insisted on perfectionism, you not only would have been let go probably, but the people you were doing your stories on wouldn't wouldn't have gotten that stories out in the world. So if you had chosen to be a perfectionist, it would have impacted lots of people.
Right. It really would have. Yes, absolutely. It would have. I think as I've gotten older, and the thing I really said to a lot of people the last couple of years is the most important thing somebody can give you is their time, and to give you permission to tell their story. And so if I would have wasted that, I think it would have been a really big disservice to that person who gave me their time to tell their story and permission to tell it. And yeah, so it definitely would have impacted that. It would have not. They probably would have maybe pushed that story. I don't even know if it would have run. I don't know.
What would you say to someone listening who is struggling with perfectionism?
I don't know. I'm also, as much as I say that that I don't know. I'm also a recovering perfectionist. But at the same time, you have to know what reality and what your time constraints are. And just try to make it as, make sure that you get the task done. Perfection to the point of not not hitting your goals. Hitting your goals is like the complete opposite of perfection, right? So I think, doing your best in the time allotted. I mean, and I don't have any specific examples, but so many things, so many pieces of art, so many stories, so many things in life by other people that have come by accident. And they're the most beautiful thing, so you can prepare and you can work hard, but don't crumple up that piece of paper because it's not perfect, because it might be just what somebody else is looking for.
So after being a photojournalist, you segued into writing commercials.
Yeah, I got tired. I was at the local station for about 10 years. And then I kind of got tired of chasing ambulances and being on call 24/7. So I transitioned into shooting.
So you literally could get a call in the middle of the night.
I could. I often got a call, and I'd often have to get out of bed and swing by somewhere where there might be a fire or an accident or possibly a robbery in the middle of the night, just to see if there was some news going on. Yeah.
So you eventually that started to wear on you. So then what happened?
It did. I mean, I saw that was probably a big catalyst on why I was still single, among other things. But it really wasn't the reason I got on the news. But I just kind of got tired of that 24/7 lifestyle. So I moved over to Midco, shooting and editing commercials. And I did that for a few years. I can't exactly remember. I've been at Midco 18 years now. I just celebrated my 18th anniversary. So maybe.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe about 8 years. Maybe, no, I don't even know. 6-8 years I was doing commercials. It doesn't matter.
6 to 8 years.
Yeah.
What's one thing you can tell us about doing commercials that we wouldn't know as a viewer of commercials?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. The thing in that is you're trying to give somebody's message, the person who, the business owner or the person trying to sell the item, you're trying to get their message across in 30 seconds or 15 seconds. and that's kind of difficult. It taught me how to edit things down and get rid of like all the extra things that you would have in normal storytelling, setting up, and it taught me how to really get to the point of things. Unlike this story, no, I'm just kidding. This specific story. I guess, yeah. So I was doing commercials and I liked it, but I really missed storytelling. And about that same time, like actually sharing people's stories. And about that time, Midco started Midco Sports, and they were doing live sporting events. They were producing, SDSU football, USD football, and they said, "Hey, we got this whole channel, but there's not always live sporting events, so we need to come up with some programs that maybe can fill the time when there's not live sporting events going on." So they came up with this program called Midco Sports Magazine, which was a human interest sports show that told stories of athletes and people around sports, and it really, sports was like the jump off point for these stories. So I helped out on that for 1 or 2 years, and then the producer of that show ended up taking another job somewhere else, and I jumped on as the showrunner, the producer, the editor, the shooter at times.
Did you only want to talk to the star athletes, the people who were making all the points?
No. I came at it with, hey, we have these other programs that are really highlighting the star athletes, and I want to tell stories of the fans. I want to tell stories of the fringe stories around sports. Again, I really wanted to use sports as this jump off point, but I didn't want to be held to this, this is Johnny, this is Sally. They're really good they're a really good athlete. They're going to go on to be a professional athlete. There's so many other stories of overcoming obstacles. There's stories of people who want to use sports as a way to become part of a group and be accepted into a group where maybe they were a loner. So I just saw sports as this cornucopia of story, that held so many stories. Somebody early on asked me, well, does this show have like a shelf life? Can you only do it for a couple of years? And I was like, no, there's so many stories. Every game, there's potentially of somebody overcoming something, physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever. And just, we also covered South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, collegiate, so our reach was anywhere that they had a connection to this region.
So I hadn't thought of this question before. Like, how would you find the stories? Like you said, each game there's a story of someone overcoming something, but how do you know who's overcoming what?
Right. I got so integrated into social media and followed like the most random Facebook pages that had connections to different states and different teams and different sports. Anywhere I went, out to eat or meeting somebody new, I would listen really intently on different stories that they were telling about people or people that they heard of. And it got to the point where other people knew that I was looking for stories, so they would reach out to me as well. One example is I think I was reading one of a daily news, national news page, and it was talking about this driver who she was attempting a land speed record. And nowhere in the story did it say where she was from. And so I did some research on her, and it ended up she grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Talk about luck.
Right. So I would say like I probably did this for 100 stories, and this is the one that had a connection to South Dakota. So I would often go down the rabbit hole of, does this story have any connection back to North Dakota, South Dakota? So this specific individual, her name was Jessie Combs. She was living in California. She just an amazing woman. I reached out to her, was having some hard times getting connected to her. I found a friend of a friend who connected us, and she was nothing but open-armed on allowing us. We happened to be sending a crew to California for another story.
No way, you found her randomly, then you happened to be sending a crew to California. What?
Right. So she was like, yeah, no problem, swing by. They came in, I think, to San Diego. Call out to San Diego for you, Jason.
Yeah.
And I can't remember where she was at, but it was late at night, and she's like, yeah, come do the interview. So they went and did the interview, and then the next day, before they left for this other story, they swung by where she was doing like a dirt race, a Baja dirt race. So they were able to get some video of her. Then I reached out to the production company that was following her for this land speed record, and they offered up video that we could use. So that was a great story. And in the time being, while we were doing that story, I thought to myself, well, I wonder who currently holds the land speed record. So I did some research, and I found out her name was Kitty O'Neill, who lived in California. She was a stunt person. She did some stunt work for Wonder Woman, the old 70s television show. She was deaf. She had a CBS or NBC movie made about her, but she retired to a small town in South Dakota.
What?
Right. So we had to do a little bit of research and how to get connected to her. But we did. And so we drove out and talked to her. And we kind of connected those two stories together, as far as Jessie Combs trying to beat Kitty O'Neill's record. But
is this on dirt bike, or what are we talking about?
This is a land speed record with I can't remember if it's 3-wheeled or 4-wheeled vehicle.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so it was like a rocket with wheels, and they would run these speed records out on the salt flats of Utah or whatever. Yeah. So it's just, and I have a number of stories that kind of weave themselves into another story Like you'd go do a story on somebody, and they would say to me, well, if you like this, you should hear about this other person who's overcoming even a bigger obstacle than I am.
I'll give you an example of how what you did can really impact a person's life. Like I was early on in my career, and suddenly you reach out to me and you're like, hey, I work for Midco Sports Network, and we want to do a story on you, and that was a big deal in my life.
Well, I appreciate that. I kind of remember that whole scenario too. You were living in San Diego. I think you had put together some video of yourself talking to the screen and talking about overcoming obstacles and such. You're awkwardly awesome. I think your book was coming out about that time. A mutual friend had shared that on social media, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. I really did. I loved your message of, awkwardly awesome, and how you just put yourself out there and embrace your awkwardness. And I think something that kids don't realize is that we're all awkward. Nobody is perfect. And you just have to embrace that. Try not to silence yourself. You should just kick the door in and tell the world, hey, this is me, and this is what I want. And I saw that in your video, and I think I reached out and I had asked, like, hey, do you think you'll get back to South Dakota anytime soon? And I don't know if we went back and forth, but you were back for a time. So you came in, and I just asked you, and I knew you were in track and cross country and such. So I just had asked if we could kind of bend your message with a little bit of a sports, I don't know, talk a little bit sports within your message. And you were open to that. And among the hundreds of stories I did for Midco Sports Magazine, I still to this day, I love that story. So
thank you so much for your kindness in doing that, and it's something to hear someone who's been around me for years say that he believes everyone has awkwardness within them. So often when we watch movies or watch TV, it seems so glossy and imperfect. And it seems like there's almost another set of people beyond us who are perfect and totally cool and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as I've grown up or matured, but I think people who are awkward, I mean, those who are trying to hide that awkwardness, you can kind of see the facade, the falseness, that they're trying too hard. But I feel like if you can embrace your awkwardness and express that, I just think that's, I don't know. I would much rather have that in my life than this false sense of perfection. So
changing subjects a little bit. You moved into positions where you weren't on call 24/7, and that made the dating life much more conducive.
It did. So I ended up kind of a little bit later in life. My brother lived next to this really nice family on this cul-de-sac, and they would often have different like Halloween events or different, maybe a birthday party or something that they would invite me to. And this family that lived next to my brother, she had a sister that was single, and they would often invite her to different events. And so we were, Lindsay and I were at different events together, and we had known each other for a little bit, and both kind of doing our dating things separately. And at some point, maybe when my life kind of settled down and her life kind of settled down, we started hanging out, and we were on a sand volleyball team together. And I think at one point she looked at me and she said, I kind of like him. And I looked at her and I said, I kind of like her. So we started dating, and we got married, and About almost coming up on 5 years ago, we had our first daughter, Eleanor, and then, or I'm sorry, oh geez, almost 7 years ago, we had our first daughter, Eleanor.
I thought you were saying I'm sorry, and then you would say a different name, and then
no. The specifics are a little off on me. My two daughters, or our two daughters, Eleanor and Geneva, will be 7 and 5 coming up this next couple months. So we are a little older parents. The doctors and nurses called us geriatric parents, which, yeah, maybe if there's a call to change a specific title, that would be it. But I've embraced it too. Whatever. I'm glad that I waited a little bit to become a parent, because the life that I lived, running from story to story while I was in news, wouldn't have been conducive to being a good, dad, and being around and being settled, a little more settled in my life. But three best things that I ever did: I got married, and I had these two girls. So,
in one or two sentences, what do you love about being a dad?
Oh, it's hard to edit myself down to one or two sentences.
Yeah,
I just love seeing them learn and seeing them grow and seeing them, just have just a wonder and excitement about life. I love being that person that they can go to and talk with when they're having a bad day, and that person that they can go to when they're, and with excitement, telling me about how amazing their day was. Okay,
for the record, that was more than one.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't edit myself down.
So I ask all my guests, what does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
I think it's just being, your imperfect best is a little bit of what we talked about before, about being, putting yourself out there, and not trying to put this facade of what you think other people want to see in you. Just being yourself. I think that's the most important thing. Listening to who you are and putting yourself out there, and allowing other people around you to do the same. I think I hope I answered that question, but
yeah, it's a wonderful answer. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for all you've done for a local community, all the stories you've celebrated. Thanks for being the magnificent person that you are.
I would say the exact same thing to you, Jason. I've enjoyed watching your podcast grow, and I am very honored to be part of this now, and your 220th episode. Thank you also for being your imperfect best.
You're welcome. Josh, please hang tight. I'm going to do a little song and dance, but then I'll bring you back. Gosh, it's just so exciting to me how we can keep making friends, keep hearing stories. Like Josh and I went to high school together. He was a year ahead of me, and at age almost about 50-ish, we are starting to have in-depth conversations. I encourage you, as I always do, to be curious about the people around you, and to let them know also about who You really are. Conversation is so rewarding and so inspiring. Thanks so much for being you. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week, please, for another great episode. Leave comments. We love comments. And remember to smile. To smile. I'll do it 3 times. To smile. Okay, bye.